There's something very bad happening in the world of media right now, and it seems to only continue to get worse, which is the continued digitization of these mediums, um, the continued reliance on large servers to deliver content to people who have fast internet connections, which is still not a lot of people around the world. Like, when we look at it in its totality, even just in the United States, so many people only have access to relatively slow satellite internet, that you're going to run into problems with if you try to uh, watch anything substantial in HD or download a video game or whatever, or even just an update for a video game, because the updates nowadays are bigger than what's actually on the disc, you know? Um, you're going to run into trouble because you have data limits on those plans. And I wish we would just take a step back and realize that at some point all of these servers can go. You know, you have to pay money to maintain them. Um, and even if they had a business model that said, okay, we can keep this content up literally forever, um, you would still have to have access to an internet connection to get that stuff. And that's in the best of worlds, you know. The reality is it's not financially feasible to engage in video game preservation, to preserve even movies in a lot of cases. Uh, they want to phase out physical releases for these things. And this is what you're seeing with the PlayStation 5 right now. They're trying to push digital only really hard, essentially treating the disc-based system as an afterthought. And this is all while releasing these half-hearted physical versions of these games that don't actually include all of the content on the disc. The updates that you're actually downloading are not really updates. In many cases, they're just the other part of the game that they couldn't manage to fit on the disc, or they just chose not to for whatever reason. We need higher capacity discs for some of this stuff, but also we just need smaller games. Like, there's no reason why a video game should be costing hundreds of millions or even just tens of millions of dollars to produce. You can produce a good looking game that doesn't have all that money and all those people behind it. The indie developers have done that. You know, there are some stunning, innovative games that have come out of the indie scene, like, for example, Stray. You know, sure, it's a walking simulator, but it's a very good looking game. Um, and so you could do more dynamic, higher caliber things without having to spend so much money. Um, would they lose some features? Would they not exist on quite the same scale? Would some of the FMVs have to go? Yeah, sure. But do we really need those things? I mean, when we're looking at the video game industry, or what we're looking from the video game industry rather, are meaningful artistic experiences that speak to the player and that provide entertainment, you know, that are fun. And that's not what we're getting, you know, with the newest AAA blockbuster that, you know, even if you like the game, you can't preserve it. It's not guaranteed that you're going to have it forever because it's either digital only or let's say you can get a physical release, you have to download the rest of it from the internet. And what's going to happen when that console dies and the internet service gets cut for that console and you can no longer download those updates? Well, you're left with essentially a paperweight. You know, you put the disc in the machine and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do because you have a key to the content. That's essentially what the disc is. It is a key to the content that you downloaded from the internet. which is not really owning anything. And this is part of the problem, because if we actually owned these video games, we would have them on the disc forever. You know, you could resell it to your friend or to a store or whatever, and somebody else could use it, and it would be the exact same product in each case. But as developers have continued to release more and more broken games at full price, and even if the games aren't broken, you know, the more they have uh, put codes inside of the box to download the rest, or you know, relied on people to download the update to access certain features in the game, um, the more that they have also removed our ownership from the equation, right? From their business model. Um, and so what we're buying in many cases are essentially glorified rentals. And this is terrible for video game preservation. It's also terrible for, you know, property rights. I mean, just look at Steam. It was kind of a controversy like a year ago now, or maybe two, when Steam had to clarify their policy regarding digital games by saying, oh yeah, you don't actually own these if you buy these from Steam. This is like just a license to play the game, and we can take it away at any time. A lot of people were surprised to hear that, but this is what video game preservationists have been saying the entire time. Copyright abolitionists as well. You know, we do not agree with the increased digitization of this industry and the ramifications that has on future generations who want to have these experiences. Um, and this, you know, ties in, you know, even more with the crackdowns that many of these companies are engaging in on so-called piracy. You know, they go after people who share these files, many of which do not exist for resale or do not exist anymore for digital sales, and they take down these websites that host the files. These are people that are preserving art. These are people that are ensuring that future generations can actually experience this stuff. And that's also, you know, this lends itself to my other point, which is the fact that the companies are consistently going after groups that jailbreak the Nintendo Switch, for example, and other consoles. Why? You know, sure, it leads to increased piracy, but it's also going to lead to increased preservation. When Nintendo releases a digital game, or a company releases one on their platform, that is a game that can now be preserved on a hard drive somewhere, which is, you know, not the best, but at least if it's on a hard drive, it can be uploaded and shared to many other people's hard drives so that they can all ensure that it's preserved. You know, I would prefer that it's optical media as well, just so that we have as many different options as possible, but that's just me. Um, you know, they're going after these people that have done nothing except display a passion for the products, the art that these companies produce. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the law as it exists. I think all of this stuff could be open source, and companies would have just as much of an incentive to create these things, because there would be some amount of people that would still want to buy it to support the product. And also, um, we would we would see many of these more expensive, bloated projects that a lot of people don't even want in the first place, that just serve to take up resources, uh, go off the market. You know, things like the newest huge AAA Call of Duty that pretty much everybody in the gaming community just complains about. Um, I think it would bring back more of a niche ethos to the hobby, and more passionate users that are only interested in the sheer quality of the games, and treating it more like in an in-depth way as a passion. I think I think it's very strange. You know, it's very strange how the more mainstream these hobbies become, the worse they get. You know, as you try to appeal to the lowest common denominator, you see features get removed from these products one by one. You know, I made a video recently about how the aux port is not available on cell phones anymore, which is literally a feature that the companies have decided to take away from the users. It's power that the companies have decided to take away from the users so that you have less power over your own device. And this appears to be what happens as technology gets more and more popular and they try to appeal more and more to the largest amount of people. That necessarily relies on, it necessarily entails trying to attract, you know, the low-hanging fruit, the lowest common denominator. And as a result of that, you see products get worse. You see the standardized form of said products become more and more stupid, you know, under the guise of accessibility. You have less power over your own devices, and you're allowed to customize them even less. I think all of that should go away. All of the legal bureaucracy, etc., you know, let people hack their devices if they want to. Give people a physical version of your product that is actually the product that you sold them. The full thing, you know, don't advertise the fact that you're selling a game and then actually you're selling a key to access the game over the internet. You know, get rid of all the red tape that prevents people from uploading and sharing this stuff, and in so doing, preserving this stuff. You know, I'm against it all. I don't like the direction we're going in. And the only thing that one can really do in this situation to fight back is well, okay, I'm not going to advocate for that on YouTube because they don't really like people talking about piracy. But I really see no reason to support modern gaming, you know, the main companies in their current state. You know, I think there's some exceptions out there. Certainly a lot of indie and AA developers are doing some great things. And if you buy a console used, you're not exactly supporting the developer that created it, or the company that created it. But I don't see a reason to buy a lot of the stuff that's coming out new, particularly because a lot of it is bad, but just in general, you know. There are a lot of great things that are still coming out. You know, I've talked about them on my channel. Atlas is doing great things, Sega is doing great things, but then at the same time there are trends happening in the industry at large that just can't be ignored. And they harm video game preservation, they harm consumer choice, and most of all, they harm the passionate base of gamers which allowed for this industry to become as big as it is now. I think in many respects, those people are being betrayed. They have been betrayed.